Ba-da-da-da-da-da. Dungeons and Dopamine. Ta-da! Hello, this is Dungeons and Dopamine. I'm Jess.
And I'm Bree.
And this is Dungeons and Dopamine.
Here we are.
We knew this was a terrible idea.
How many weeks did we miss? Like, not on episodes, but
Sure.
How long has it been since I've been here?
At least
Like
2.
2 weeks?
Mm-hmm.
Why does it feel like it's been 6 months?
Because 6 months worth of stuff has happened in those 2 weeks.
I will agree with that. Between work and life and the weather being horrendously hot and moist.
Okay, podcast canceled. I'm done.
That's all it took?
That's it.
All this time. I could have ended it earlier. All I had to do was say moist.
Done this in episode 1 when we talked about the Titanic. Everything that ended up at the bottom of the ocean was so moist. Done. Quit. Now it just seems disingenuine. Yeah, and we saw each other twice the week we had recorded too, because we had our girls' weekend.
Oh, that's
as
right.
well.
We haven't been here since girls' weekend. Mm-mm. That's right. So much has happened in the last couple weeks.
It's
Holy
crazy.
Cow.
So one thing that was really cool, this is totally, completely random, but I thought it was so cool that I need to talk about it. It's something I found accidentally on TikTok, shocker, called Bark Phone.
Yes.
Did you look at it at all?
I had actually seen it previously, but because Connor is still so young, I was just putting it out of my brain every time I saw it.
Yeah, so Bark Phone. So I was watching, I watched this guy, he's ex-police, but like in internet crimes division kind of thing. And he's kind of scary to watch. Like, a lot of times when I watch him, I end up crying just because that's so overwhelming to think about. Mm-hmm. And obviously, he doesn't and can't talk about cases or anything like that. But he just gives tips and tricks. And, like, you can comment and say, what about for a woman traveling alone? And he'll give you devices. And he'll, show you the best ways to avoid having, whatever. Just fill in the blank. He's amazing. Right. So I just stumbled across one of them. I watched it. I cried because did you know? And I actually did know this before I saw it, but it just made me cry to think about it. Did you know if you lose your child, say in a busy place like an amusement park was what this lady was asking about, you are not supposed to yell your child's name. You're supposed to yell your child's description, because if you yell someone's name, you could be looking for anybody,
right? But
if you start yelling 8-year-old girl, brown hair, wearing a yellow shirt, should be here, name is Carly, blah blah blah, that makes people look.
That makes sense.
And scares people who might be, walking off with your kid. God forbid I ever need that information. But
if you've got everyone around you looking for a particular child, then they're like, oh, dude, that weird guy just went that way with.
Exactly. And if I started hearing that, I would start looking around immediately. My mom brain would click on and I would be watching for that child and sharing that information with everyone I came across. So anyway, I watched that video about that, and then I went into the comments and happened across someone asking about a phone for their kid, and he suggested Bark Phone, and he was like, go to my bio, blah, 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 and then he did several videos about how he doesn't just endorse them because he gets money back or anything. I don't even think he does get money back on it. But he said, I just really believe in the product. So with all that being said, let me go and tell you guys what the really cool product is. So it's Bark Phone. It's an Android device, which hopefully wouldn't deter people. You can get an app and use it on your own personal device, but it isn't as good. And this app will pull not only text and phone call information that your kid has shared, but in-app texting stuff. And it knows all the latest slang. So apparently a picture of noodle, like the little icon of spaghetti, is nudes.
Noodles,
so send spaghetti, send nudes. So it knows that and will flag it. And then it sends the parent or the account manager or whatever that text and says, hey, something might be going on. Mm-hmm. One lady said she was testing it and just sending all sorts of wacky texts back and forth, and it could recognize a lot of stuff. It was KYS, she was saying, bad stuff, and it was flagging her. And everybody's big complaint about it is that it takes a few hours for it to alert you sometimes that something's going on. But better late than never.
Right. Like, there's nothing else out there that's doing that's alerting you the minute it happens. So,
and I did see a couple people in the comments like, well, I just feel like this is really affecting their what do you say? Like their autonomy, their privacy, and I'm like, sorry, nope.
Not at that age. Not on a phone I pay for. Not if they're doing dumb stuff.
So, speaking of the internet, I'm going to talk about the Terra-Cotta Soldiers again.
Perfect. The Terra-Cotta Soldiers loved the internet.
They loved
it. They told
me. They www'd all the time. Everywhere.
All the time.
Look, I'm desperate and tired. We're lucky I even remembered that I had to talk. So I do want to refresh you. The Terra-Cotta Soldiers, I talked about them 2 weeks ago in podcast land.
And then which was really 6 months ago.
Exactly.
In Brian's brain.
Exactly. So then we took a break and talked about kindness, which is still one of my favorite episodes that we've recorded.
Yes, I agree.
I still haven't edited it yet, so I have no idea what it's going to sound like to you guys. But
you're going to get it open and be like, what? Why did we think this was good?
It's going to be like Russian or something. Yes. So, the Terra-Cotta Soldiers. They were found about 4 decades ago in China by some farmers who were going to make up a well. And they started digging up all of this chunks of terracotta and pieces of the statues, basically. The first emperor of China had them made to protect his grave. It ended up being this great big mausoleum. It's huge. He's in like a bronze tomb. He's all fancy. He's got ducks and acrobats. And it's just wildly cool. There's like 6,000 of them, and they have unique faces, and it's insane. Mm-hmm. And so here we are.
That's it. I just wanted to recap from last time, and
everyone
now
have a great
we're
night.
moving on.
Bye-bye. So I want to talk about the internet.
I'm going to read you some cool things I read today.
In fact, I found our old Angel Fire website.
Gosh,
actually, that would be amazing.
Wish we could.
I know. We know all about the Terra-Cotta Soldiers, obviously, because I taught us. And we would be able to pass a test on them. But let me tell you a little bit more about some of the just surrounding information. I wanted to start with just a crazy fact. They had a ton of bones that they found all around the dig site and everything. They actually found European DNA in some of the skeletons. So it's they kind of wonder if like the Europeans came over to help them or to teach them techniques, or if they had I don't want to say slaves, I mean more of like prisoners, like war prisoners that they were putting to work or something. Mm-hmm. I don't know what war it would have been, or if it would have just been a small dispute. Don't ask me anything about that. That's a cool fact, fun fact of the day. As I said, this was the first emperor of China, and he actually ended up being kind of okay. It's kind of cool if you look at a history book. Apparently, he was also kind of a douche.
Okay.
But he created the Great Wall of China. There were already a lot of walls. He connected all of them to create the Great Wall of China. Okay. So he didn't completely do it, because it was, I want to say, hundreds of years in the making to get it all done. But he completed it. He filled in all the gaps to protect his land, I guess. To protect China.
To protect them.
He united warring kingdoms to kind of create China as one big, happy China. He put an end to feudalism, and, of course, the Great Wall of China. But a lot of people would argue that the Terra-Cotta Army is one of the biggest, coolest things the Great Wall of China would have been if he'd have started it and finished it. But he didn't. He just filled in the holes. So he had a son. He had several children. He had a son. He was raising him to take over and be the next emperor. It's going to be so cool. And then his other son killed his son. Aww. And that wasn't as cool.
What a jerk.
So something I read kind of made me chuckle, and it said it was the literal Chinese Game of Thrones, because it was a lot of bloodshed for this position as emperor. Archaeologists, as they were digging and looking around at all of this history, found a lot of weird stuff. So they found one of the very royally buried people with a bolt in his skull, like a crossbow bolt. I don't know why that sounded weird, but it did.
No, it does.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And they assumed that he was one of the princes who was also offed by his brother so that his brother could reign. They found an actual entire tomb. It looks like it would have been considered the royal family tomb.
Okay.
And it was full of male skeletons. So it does look like this one brother went and killed everyone that he could get his hands on. He also killed all of the king's concubines because they might be carrying an heir who would one day then leave, or they would smuggle him out and he'd come back and challenge him.
Right.
Yeah. You know,
Game of Thrones
Game
stuff.
of Thrones, exactly. Daenerys. It's not the men you have to worry about, bro. Anyway, I digress. The weird thing about the concubines was that they were also dismembered.
Because that's necessary.
Right. And their parts were just strewn about in the grave, the tomb that they were in. My thought on it was that they went in with the orders to just destroy them. And in the fight, it was just grotesque. And they just slaughtered all of these women. Ew. There is an author that a lot of this information comes from, and I'm so sorry, I know it's wrong. Sima Qian, or Qian maybe, is the author, and he is the one that reports that this was all the second son's doing, and that he killed all the concubines, he killed the other brothers. It was bloody, it was bad, and he wrote a really compelling tale. He was an official in the Second Dynasty. So he might not have been the most reliable narrator, because not only does he tell that whole story of, Game of Thrones like grandeur, but he also claims that the first emperor, had 700,000 laborers and convicts that built his army, his Terra-Cotta army. Which seems like a lot even
nowadays.
Even in China, because you think of China, it's very bustling. It's one of the most populated countries.
But still.
But that's a lot of people.
And that was a long time ago.
A long time ago.
Okay.
Yeah. So it would kind of indicate that maybe he was fibbing.
Maybe he's a big liar.
Exaggerating. But I mean, there is some evidence in there of this royal bloodshed and all of these very strange things that might have happened. So, he might not have been telling complete lies. He might have been. So, it's really interesting. It makes me kind of want to look back. Like, I want to look through a camera lens at history and see it actually happen. Because I can obviously speak Chinese.
First step.
It's Mandarin? Mandarin.
Learn Mandarin. Second step.
Develop camera that can see into past. Record. Record first emperor's life. And death. And children. That's a little bit more of the information I wanted to share about his history. Now, kind of discombobulated a little bit like I was the last time when I told this story. But I want to talk again back about the army and this really interesting article that I came across where a man who has visited the army said that it was literally the worst tourist thing he's ever done. I just want to read this, like... I just want to read this little excerpt from the article, and then hopefully by the end of this I will be able to tell you what the article came from, because I closed it. So I'll find it, and I'll tell you, so that he doesn't sue us for anything.
For anything.
So this is how his article opened. The Colosseum in Rome, Angkor Wat in Cambodia. I can't... Chichen Itza in Mexico. Some sites around the world were absolutely amazing to see in person, no matter how many times I'd seen them in pictures, or how many times I'd built them up in my head, or how much I had built them up in my head. However, the Terra-Cotta Warriors definitely do not fall into this category. In fact, I don't think it's a stretch to call them the most disappointing and underrated tourist attraction in the world.
Oh.
He says that they lack the wow factor. And he says that this part I can understand. You can't get close to them. You can't, go down and walk amongst them, which would be so freaking cool.
Right?
But you have to stand away from them and kind of look and admire them from afar. And I can understand where that would be a little bit disappointing. But there's so much cool history.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not a history girl, and I dug this. This was cool.
Well, and it's... So I have said out loud that I thought the Grand Canyon was awesome for about 10 minutes.
Sure.
And then I was over it.
Unless you were on a donkey riding down it. Yeah.
You're standing on the ledge. There's a bunch of people around. You know, it looks exactly like it does in the pictures.
Sure.
It's vast. It's overwhelming. And then you're like, okay, cool. And you move on. And other people I was with were not so underwhelmed by it and wanted to stay longer. But I can't imagine... I mean, even the Grand Canyon, you're like, okay, yeah, like water probably formed it
exactly.
Millions
it
of years
doesn't
ago,
have
whatever.
this incredible history.
But not like, yeah.
It's
somebody
cool.
created...
And they all have different features and different faces.
Like, that would be a huge feat nowadays with machines.
Yes.
And they didn't have that back. Like, this is incredible. And he's like, I don't know. I couldn't touch him, so...
So, I mean, I can see staying away from them being disappointed or disappointing and like, bummer, I really wanted to go take pictures with them and see them and kind of, I mean, how cool would it be to stand amongst them and have thousands of warrior statues around you?
Right.
I'm in awe of the stormtrooper section of the ride at Disney World where there's like dozens of rows of stormtroopers. They're not even real. And I'm like, yes!
This is amazing.
I'm going to cry.
Somebody made this.
Exactly. I thought that his article was really interesting. I will either link it or before the end I will tell you what it was called. So if you want to go read it yourself. He does make some good points, and I obviously have never seen them, but I just feel like, how can you overlook something so cool with so much history? I've heard the pyramids can be a letdown, but you still go because of that history.
Right.
So I brought his article up because at the very end of his article, at some point in his article, he talks about how he's not sure if the statues themselves that are presented for the people to look at are real or fake. And he says this because historically, most of what was found before the big discovery and the big archaeological dig was happened, they found pieces. They found just pieces of these guys. They didn't find whole statues. Of course, how many years ago?
Right.
But he said he wonders if someone had replicated and then placed them there because they wanted the touristy stuff. And apparently, China's only ever allowed their approved archaeologists to go see them and discover with them. So it's very interesting And he says in his article, don't think I'm a conspiracy theorist. And I was like, actually, though.
Are you sure?
I want to share some of the, I think, most fun conspiracy theories about the Terra-Cotta Soldiers. And then I'll wrap it up. And hopefully there will be a semblance of a podcast here. Of course, we gotta start out strong with aliens. Some people believe that aliens helped create them or made them, or I've heard encased soldiers in stone.
Oh, okay.
So that's why they have different features, because they're all actually different people.
I like that one. That's my new favorite theory.
Right. That there's how do I say this? Some people believe that there was a whole civilization of really forward-thinking, advanced, artistic, and scholarly people who built the Terra-Cotta Army and then either went into hiding, and that's why no one can find them, or were wiped out eventually, and no one speaks of them for whatever reason. Probably because they were aliens.
Because their memory has been wiped by the little flashy things.
Exactly.
Duh.
Some people believe that there are secret chambers and tunnels that go all around the site, which I don't think is very far-fetched. That's not exactly a conspiracy theory, but super cool. Some people say there's a curse on the Terra-Cotta Army, that anyone who works on it or works around it or gets near it will be cursed. Some people, and this ties into what that man had written, say that it's a Chinese governmental cover-up, and that they're trying to hide or control or influence. They did say that during the 70s there was some political stuff happening, like China was opening up to the Western world. And so what cooler, better way to get people interested than to, we just found decades old by the very first emperor of China. Let's teach you about him.
Right.
So, I mean, there's something there. Ancient advanced technology, same thing as like our pyramids talk. Now, how could they build the pyramids with just pulleys and levers? This is just one kind of... Okay, do you remember when you told us that, I think it was during your moon phases or your druid stuff, that there are certain points that people believe are connected somehow, like the Stonehenge type of stuff?
Oh, yeah.
So there's a group out there that think that the Terra-Cotta Army is connected to other big, so the pyramids, Machu Picchu, and they're all connected with like codes and messages, and they mean something, and they connect somehow.
Probably the Voynich manual tells us all, or manuscript
that tells us all about
connected.
It. No, I want that to be a D&D game or something.
I'll have to go back to the Voynich manuscript and see if it references some Terra-Cotta Soldiers.
We should get on a list that tells us whenever they make a discovery about the Voynich.
Right?
That was so interesting.
I think about it all the time.
Oh my gosh, right? It came up in my newsfeed the other day.
Yeah.
They
just made another... I still don't think they're making any like new discoveries so much as they're like tracing the history of it.
Right, yeah.
But they still don't know where it came from.
So yeah, I guess that's kind of the last conspiracy. That covers several conspiracies. So like the sites are connected. There are hidden messages from different time periods or different people or different groups hidden amongst them that haven't been decoded yet.
Well, obviously the aliens landed, helped build the pyramids, they put Stonehenge in place, they did all the things.
They were busy
left us a manuscript and then rolled out.
Bye guys.
We'll check back in.
And yeah.
Someday.
And then they got infected by the alien from Alien, and they're gone. Mm-hmm. So,
obviously, we just solved it.
Clearly a true story.
We are so good at solving these long dead mysteries.
You know what we're not good at?
The Dogman of Michigan.
I was going to say segues, but yeah, also the Dogman of Michigan.
I think we're really good at segues. Sometimes.
I picture us on Segways.
Right, exactly. I've never been on a Segway.
Same.
But we'd probably be just fine.
Sure. They're not like hoverboards, so you have a handle.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'd be okay.
Yeah. Totally.
So, we're segueing right over to you and your topic.
All right. So, mine kind of goes back to a few weeks ago when I talked about big lawn and how big lawn is the reason that we hate pretty weeds like dandelions and violets.
Yes. Yep.
And it kind of got me thinking about other marketing campaigns that were overly successful but kind of based on outright lies or exaggerations. And I was really excited when I started this topic, but I struggled really hard with it. And it's kind of good that we had the delays because I really feel like I put the finishing touches on it yesterday.
I'm glad for you because I didn't.
You forgot your entire topic, and I waited 3 weeks to add more information to mine. I will say that this is going to be very, very basic coverage of this topic. Because, number one, to really delve into it, I would probably need, like, an economy degree from Yale or some big college and, like, a whole year's worth of episodes to get through all of it. But since these are only 20-minute segments and I'm not supposed to make everybody hate the world because this is a dopamine podcast, I'm going to try to do this justice without overdoing it. I do think this is incredibly important right now to talk about as we're coming up on our primary election is next week, and our November election is the great big presidential election that literally everyone is talking about right now. And regardless of what side of politics you fall on, I really believe that everyone should take the time to investigate not only what their candidate says they stand for or what the party they support stands for, but also what they actually support and encourage, what they're funding, what they're receiving money from, the causes that they are actually acting upon versus just what they say. I also encourage everybody to find some unbiased media coverage to get your information, especially about the election or anything that's going on in the world right now, because the internet is riddled with lies. Just FYI.
What? Excuse me?
Surprise!
Stonehenge is the most disappointing tourist attraction. No, wait. No, the Terra-Cotta Army.
So, obviously, finding unbiased media coverage is pretty hard and pretty much impossible if you don't actively look for it. I found just 3 interesting sites. One is called allsides.com. The 1440, so just 1440, claims to be fact-based only. And then, of course, the Associated Press is supposed to be, like, the best unbiased news source that there is. And, of course, there are websites out there now that you can fact-check information you're reading. Snopes.com is still pretty reliable. There's a couple other ones. But again, you want to be careful what websites you're checking and you are trusting. And you can't always trust, like, social media's fact checkers anymore. And obviously we know Wikipedia isn't always accurate because that can also be changed by users. So watch where you're getting your information from. I don't know if this is a generational thing, and I won't call out any specific generations, but I think there's a large amount of people in the United States right now that forgot that anything can be made up and posted on the internet, that facts and statistics can be skewed, pictures can be faked, quotes can be misconstrued, and incorrect information goes viral all the time. Also, to start, I took a statistics class in college, and that was where I first learned that even though statistics are technically math, and math is supposed to be one of those subjects that's relatively stable and, like, always has a correct answer, statistics are not. They can be skewed. For instance, if I am writing about, like, my company, I could tell you if I have 3 clients right now and I gain another 3 clients over this next year, I could still present that my company had 100% growth over this last year. I also learned in nonprofit that if you divide up your statistics or your results the right way, instead of saying things like, my product helped 30% of participants overall, if you divide that data into age groups, you could maybe say that your product helped 80% of participants that were in the 30 to 40 age group. I see this a lot on the internet. We think statistics, or we think if somebody throws out a statistic or a mathematical figure, that must mean it's true or it's correct or that it's not skewed. True. So a reminder that we cannot depend on that. And we know these days that we're bombarded with ads all day, every day, especially now with the internet and social media. But I believe that a lot of people are blocking out not only how effective some of these ad campaigns can be, but that our country is actually set up in a way that funding and lobbying can change the very basics of our everyday life. We are more affected by all of these ads we're bombarded with, and it has been like this since media started to exist. One of the biggest examples, obviously, and what I'm going to start with, is cigarettes. We know now that cigarettes are unhealthy and will kill us. But for many years, the advertising for cigarettes is that they were good for you, that they made you look cool. Doctors thought they were good for you. This wasn't just portrayed on commercials and billboards. This was literally told to people by doctors.
Weren't they not prescribed as weight loss?
Yes. Yep. Now we know that these studies, these health studies that are supposedly what we base our knowledge and how we treat our bodies, can be skewed by who does the study, who funds the study.
Milk.
I'll get to milk. Yes. Even something that is unhealthy and known to be unhealthy, the lobbyists and funding and advertising can still convince not only us, but our doctors that they should be advertising this to us. We see it now with weight loss medications. There were all kinds of weight loss medications that doctors were peddling for a while that now we know aren't really that healthy for you. Or Oxycontin, narcotics, things like that were literally marketed to doctors as this new saving grace for patients with pain. And doctors handed out these medications like candy to everybody, children, adults, for years, until all of a sudden we realized we have an addiction problem in the United States because of these drugs that either weren't tested well enough to know that they are horribly addicting, or those studies were ignored and the pharmaceutical reps were encouraged to tell the doctors that everything's safe, keep going. Other health-related marketing stories that aren't as devastating as cigarettes. Did you know that in World War II, the British Ministry of Information did a whole campaign about the importance of eating carrots? And to this day, this is why we think carrots are good for eyesight.
Yes.
But they're not. They're not any better for you than any other vegetable. The British Ministry of Information did this because they had recently started testing and developing radar technology, and they needed an excuse for when other countries started to comment on why they seem to be able to see so well in the dark.
Wow.
You mentioned the milk campaign. So the Got Milk campaign was launched by like the California Board of Milk or something crazy, and was so successful that it convinced people still to this day that milk is the best and pretty much only source of calcium, and if you don't drink it every day, your teeth will fall out and your bones will rot. Even as simple as orange juice. We drink orange juice in the morning with breakfast because Sunkist launched a successful campaign in the 1920s that told women that orange juice is easy and healthy for breakfast. Do you remember the food pyramid from when we were kids?
I do, yeah.
Do you remember what was at the bottom of the pyramid, the biggest part?
Wasn't it like whole grains?
Not whole grains, just grains.
Just grains?
Yes. And at the very top of the pyramid, in the tiniest little triangle, was protein. We now know that the food pyramid, all of that funding and all of that study was funded by, American farmers and people and companies that needed us to eat large amount of grain, large amount of bread, large amounts of rice, and then fruits and vegetables, which is the second part. And so we based our whole schools, everybody based our whole nutritional situation based on a food pyramid that is not only inaccurate, but actually studies now show led to increased health issues in the United States. Going into like consumerism, so that was kind of health-based stuff. Consumerism, most people probably know this one, and I don't have a ton for this, but the first one is diamonds.
Yeah.
So prior to De Beers Diamonds starting their company and their campaign of Diamonds Are Forever, diamonds were nobody cared about them.
Yep.
Like, they weren't a rare mineral, they weren't put in rings. They weren't a big deal. And then De Beers comes out in 1870, and a few years later launches this campaign and convinces people that the only way to prove your love is forever is to buy a diamond engagement ring, because diamonds are forever.
See how the pretty people on the screen, see how that pretty man got that pretty woman to love him more because this is a diamond? And also they're super rare. So they're going to be super expensive, but it's totally worth it. Just 3 months
forever,
of your salary.
Just like your love.
Yep.
And to this day, people think they have to spend 3 months worth of their salary on an engagement ring. And now we have a big issue with blood diamonds and all kinds of other ethical issues with diamonds. It's crazy. This one almost made me angrier than anything else I talked about. Women's ads or products in general. So we call it the pink tax now. It started way back when with Gillette razors. They invented their safety razor, which of course was marketed to men to shave their faces. And then Gillette said, we have this whole untapped market. What if we could convince women that they need to shave? And so they launched ad campaigns, both in, it must have been magazines back then, where they made ads where women were embarrassed to have body hair. They even wrote stories about a woman that was afraid to go to the beach because she hadn't shaved her legs that day. And that is how they convinced women that we should not have body hair.
And I still believe it.
Yes, and here we are all these years later, still shaving most of the hair off our bodies. And it's not just body hair. The whole market for women's products is based on making us feel bad about ourselves.
Yep.
Makeup, clothes, razors,
pads.
Facial screams.
I like that you looked up at me and said that too. Facial screams.
Facial creams. Everything is based on making us feel bad about ourselves. We're ugly and we need something to fix it. We're broken and we need something to fix it. All of it is based on ads that made us feel bad about ourselves. But think about even back to when we were separated in class in 4th grade, boys versus girls, and told about our bodies. It was a secret meeting with only women and teachers, where we got to talk about our bodies, and it was all very quiet and it was all very hush hush. And basically, from the time we were children, we have been shamed about what our bodies do. What our bodies do naturally. Moving on. Well, I'm not going to spend long on this because, again, this is really where the topic could get into days and days and days and days.
When you said the pink tax, did you mention that also all of those products cost more for women just because they're marketed for women?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just a couple nefarious companies, and again, I'm not going to stay on this long. The biggest one, and most people probably know this, is Nestle. I mean, they have a lot of questionable business practices, and there's a water issue. They're stealing water from people that need it. But another interesting, horrific thing they did is they started marketing to third world countries that formula is best. Breast is bad, especially third world countries have issues with health and diseases that can be transferred in breast milk. So they started heavy hitting marketing saying that breast milk is bad, formula is important, and then went to these third world countries and provided free formula to all of these women in these countries. They provided free formula, got all of these women hooked on formula, basically, because once you start feeding your baby formula, you lose your milk supply. And then pulled right out, went back home, and started forcing these women to pay for formula that they had gone over and got these women hooked on.
And I feel like for sure they spun it as though they were doing something really good.
Oh, absolutely. Something we've talked about a few times, but I'm going to cover it again because this is just insane to me. The poor woman that was burned by the coffee at McDonald's. And for years, when we were teenagers and into adulthood, we were told, frivolous lawsuits. Who sues someone over hot coffee? She must have been crazy. And it was marketed to us as a frivolous lawsuit, and it was marketed to us by McDonald's. McDonald's severely burned a older woman with hot coffee. It's an awful story.
It's
Read
horrible.
it yourself.
Yeah.
Her injuries were
substantial
and horrifying.
Yeah.
And she
just wanted her medical bills paid.
She just went to them. She wanted a couple $1,000s to pay her medical bills and asked them to lower the temperature of their coffee so that it wouldn't happen to anyone else. They refused. It went to court. The court and the judge and the jury sided with this woman to the extent that they threw out whatever she was asking for and awarded her millions of dollars and forced McDonald's to turn their temperatures down. And in response, McDonald's ran a smear campaign on this woman. And the reason we started talking about frivolous lawsuits is because McDonald's placed that into the media so that we would ignore the fact that they destroyed a woman's life and just continue eating their food.
Love it.
Yeah. Super great.
Weren't they also warned before she got burned to turn their coffee down several times?
She was not the first complaint or the first injury. I won't get into all of the Monsanto stuff. We know who Monsanto is. Bayer, Monsanto, whoever they are these days. There was all the big back and forth about GMOs a few years ago and genetically modified products. Monsanto not only creates those genetically modified products, but they will sue farmers who may have accidentally ended up with some of their product via like normal pollination. So if a Monsanto field is next to a non-Monsanto field and somehow it cross contaminates or breeds into whatever they're growing, they will sue farmers over that. But what I didn't know is when their whole backlash happened and everybody was mad at them and concerned about what they were doing, they actually planted employees on the internet in like chat rooms and places like Reddit or anywhere where people might be talking about this stuff, and had those people spread false information. And they were caught. It went to court that Monsanto was planting fake people in community areas to spread false information and defend their company. The scariest part about all of this is that our government is often involved in these campaigns or their own campaigns. I'm not going to talk too much about it because I don't want us to be shut down by the federal government. But one thing that I always think is funny, and I actually got this information from a podcast I've probably mentioned before called You Should Know.
Yes.
The DARE program.
Yes.
So when we were kids, when we were in elementary school, the DARE program was rolled out, and it stood for Drug Abuse Resistance Education, and we spent, I don't know, a week or one day a week for a few weeks talking, like we got little coloring books that went through.
Police officer came in.
Yep, a cop came in, talked to us about all the different drugs, like all the different names it could go by, how you say no to drugs, and all of that. Turns out this was a government program spearheaded by Nancy Reagan. The government poured billions of dollars into this program, rolled it out to pretty much every school, public school across the country. Yet there's not a single study that scientifically points to DARE actually doing anything besides teaching us more about drugs and getting us to tell on our parents and get them in trouble. And this actually was another story from You Should Know, and one that sticks with me is actually the Bill Clinton scandal, which I think we were in like first, second grade when that all happened.
Were we that young?
Well, I know we were in first grade when he got elected.
Okay.
Around those ages. So the Clinton scandal is the Monica Lewinsky and Bill Clinton, they were caught doing adult things. Did you know that Bill Clinton was 49 years old to Monica Lewinsky's 22 years old at that time?
I've learned this recently.
And that he was literally the president of the United States, and she was a 22-year-old intern. She was dragged through the mud. Her career was destroyed. Her life was destroyed. She was decimated over this scandal. And I want to believe that if this happened nowadays, it would be different because we are more concerned about grooming and subordinate relationships. I'm not sure it would have mattered. I want to believe it would be different, but it probably wouldn't. But Monica Lewinsky was a 22-year-old intern that was taken advantage of by her boss, who was the president of the United States. And sure, I think he did have, there was an impeachment trial over that. I don't think anything ever came of it. It must not have, because people still seem to like Bill Clinton. He's still around. We have no problems with him. And most of the comments are probably, attaboy, good job, blah. But we just, the media and the government destroyed a 22-year-old woman's life.
Name in my brain still, tickles make a joke kind of thing.
Absolutely.
I was young. I shouldn't know anything about it.
But it still filtered down to us, and we still grew up thinking, whatever awful things that we were told about her. All right, and to turn it around and end on a good note, I don't have a ton of good ad stories. I know they're out there. It was just really hard to find through all of the gross that's out there. But my two favorite campaigns that I think are probably, that I know are doing good things in this world, the Real Beauty campaign by Dove.
Yes.
So this, actually, I looked it up. This started in 2004, and Dove started using real women in their ads. All different shapes, all different sizes, all different colors, all different abilities. And I think that was probably a catalyst for what we see nowadays. Now if you go into a store, the mannequins are actually normal size in some stores.
Yeah.
Or you might even see plus size mannequins in some stores. I think our advertising in magazines and on TV, we're starting to see more normal-sized people. We're finally getting away from that 90s generation where everybody was 100 pounds and stick thin.
Yeah. I found that I've seen shows and movies lately, and then when I see someone who's very thin, who would have been glorified for being perfect back then, and please believe, I'm not saying thin people are bad, because they're thin, hopefully, because that's how their body is. But I was like, oh my gosh, she's so thin. Not, oh yes, of course she's the star of this show.
Right.
No, she's so thin. Holy cow.
It's not like, oh, everybody's so thin. Look at that normal size actress that now we think is overweight. Nowadays, it's more like, oh, all of these actors and actresses are normal sized. Is that skinny girl okay?
Exactly. Well, you think of things like Bridgerton, and they never could have had a plus size. Well, I would say she's more average size than plus, but I think they call them regular size or straight sized sex scene.
Yes.
What? Now, not that I'm thrilled that there's sex scenes, but
no,
that doesn't happen. Yeah. You can't do that.
There can't be normal sized women having sex.
They don't do that.
Another one that I thought was cool that I forgot about is Always, the pad company. They did the Fight Like a Girl campaign a few years ago. Yeah. Portraying that women were just as strong as men, or stronger than men. And that, Degree deodorant has a strong enough for a man, built for, or made for a woman.
Yes.
So there are ad campaigns out there that are building women up, that are building people up, that are helping with things. All of this to say, be careful where you're getting your news from, be careful where you're getting your information from, and even then understand that the media we use is controlled by powers beyond us. Even scholarly research can be funded by unethical companies that make sure the data reads in favor of their product. And companies can use all kinds of unethical methods to ensure the information we receive is curated to benefit them and our government, and not so much curated to benefit us. Yay! Except for us. You can listen to the Dungeons and Dopamine podcast, because we're not owned by anybody. And no one funds us.
Although...
if you want to, we could talk about...
I got some pretty empty pockets here that you could fill up. We could talk about some
marketing campaigns.
Exactly. Yeah, so... I love it. I don't. I don't love it. It's how I always end your topic. Because
I don't love it.
You did a great job. How's that? We'll just go with that. You did a great job.
Thanks.
But everything's sad.
Everything is sad now. My day is ruined.
Thanks for that. No, it is very good information. Remember it. It does. I also agree that no matter what side you're on of anything, you should be checking your facts and learning Yeah. So,
this was Dungeons and Dopamine Podcast.
You can listen to us anywhere you stream podcasts and also on YouTube.
You can support us on Patreon at www.patreon.com/dungeonsdopamine, and then we'll repeat all of the things that you want us to repeat.
Absolutely. You can buy my loyalty. You can find us on social media. Where are we at? Find us on Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, Insta, and Reddit.
You can also reach out to us on any of those social medias, or you can email us at dungeonsdopamine@yahoo.com.
Dungeons and Dopamine is edited and published by Argyle Pigeon Productions. That's it.
Thanks for making it through this episode.
It's gonna sound so much better after editing. Okay, we love you.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Bye.